Hey guys, Dr. Prometheus here with another video, and I said I wasn't going to deep dive into this too much after my review of The Last of Us, but I have a couple things to really say about the story after a couple more days of thought on the story itself. It's going to take more of a neutral, semi-positive note on the story itself, but in a light that I don't think a lot of people have really looked at. The story as it is in conflict with itself. I see this as the fact that Joel is found through happenstance after going through some of the letters again. The area where Joel and Tommy really patrol is a relatively low activity of infected, and there's many happenstance coincidences that move the plot in the direction it's going. You say a big term with that would be Deus Ex Machina or divine intervention, where the plot is pushed towards where it's going. This happens a lot and takes away a lot of the aspects that I wish were in the game. This occurs again when Dina and Ellie actually get into Seattle on day one. They see the fuck Fedra gate, and they see what is the WLF base because of the sign. Things like this occur throughout the game and really push the narrative in one direction, but there were many other things that could have been done, at least in my opinion. Obviously, as an outsider playing the game and really saying what I would like to see. But as an outsider, having to find the notes and the gas and things like that, and then get in that area and then investigate that area on top of that, and then moving through and finding out that that's the base would have been the most practical way to do it. But we're talking about the story, and it keeps on doing by happenstance. Then we're going to focus on here is, I think the story is two stories that are interwovenly by events that occur because of coincidence. So the first idea of coincidence is that it assumes the doctor that you had to kill in the first game, it has a daughter and she seeks revenge. The next coincidence is how Joel's killed. Next one is where they find the base, how the story progresses. A loose coincidence of the map on the floor, of how Abby finds Ellie, Dina, Tommy, and Jesse. And these keep on going over and over and over until you really get to the end of the game, and it's just a bunch of coincidences that just so happen to play out in that order. The thing that I see this game, as I've thought about it a couple more days, is this is really two stories. And if I look at this in two stories, they are two good stories. Thing is, when put together, it is one giant bad story. Now, you can argue with, oh, you didn't understand the story, so how could you say it's bad? Well, I understood the story. I get the gist. I've lived a real life revenge scenario. So, I mean, I get the story. And I get the feelings of the characters. The thing is, so many things are unbelievable. And I'm an analytical person at heart. So, when you give me an analytical person at heart, these coincidences, it makes the game more unbelievable. Now that's just my personality, and that maybe if your personality really doesn't deal more towards analyzing things, or maybe you just overanalyze your own life and no one else's. I mean, some people do that. But when you analyze how this actually goes down, it is a bunch of coincidences without any logic of pattern. And that's what makes it unbelievable to me. There's no pattern to anything. Now, if there was a pattern and essentially it was a pattern of risk taking, and then Joel gets outsmarted in taking risks, now that's one thing. But there is no pattern to it. Everything is coincidence. So if I were to look at the story and say, hey, I want something different from Last of Us 2, I break it up into 2 games. Now, when I look at Abby's story, when you don't put it in the context of everything else, and you take it away and you say, hey, this is a standalone story that has nothing to deal with Ellie and Joel, it is very, very compelling. It's a very compelling story. When you connect it to Ellie and Joel in the overall, is when it doesn't compute for me. It doesn't make anything believable. And maybe that's just my preconceptions on what I wanted from the game. From the first one to the second one, I wanted a new adventure between Ellie and Joel. And I wanted it in a way that maybe was kind of like the flashbacks. Like something happens in the span of what they did with flashbacks. Say a couple years later, Joel is hunted and it becomes a Joel-centric story, but Ellie is still a big part of it. Do you play Ellie more of the story than you did in the first game? Do you do a dual character between Ellie and Joel? You slowly pass off the torch to Ellie. So if you were to make a third game, it becomes one that Joel is older. As you get older, you get weaker, and he takes a risk and ends up dying. Or say he's just done. He's done going out. He's done taking the risks. Kind of like how Manny's father is when you meet him in the... I think that's his father. When you meet him in the older gentleman that he's talking to at the table when you're Abby and you have getting the food and everything. You walk up to him before you actually go down into, I think, your room and then into the dome where you see the dogs and everything. But that gentleman is older, and so he's not out taking risks. That'd be something to explore in the third game. Maybe Ellie just breaks out on her own. Cool. But with Abby's storyline is compelling when taken from a different aspect. And I think if they wanted to, the theme really with Joel and Ellie should have continued from the first game, in my opinion. Again, this is opinions. If you have different opinions, it's all good. Everyone has their opinions. And especially on a game like this, when you go through opinions, nothing's wrong. Things like that. There are certain aspects where there's fact, like everything that happens to Joel up to his death is all circumstantial. It's all coincidences and things like that. There's nothing you can really tell me that's factual there that happens and leads up to his death. There's no risk taken. There's nothing. It just happens. And I think that's where I'm lost in the story, because that's the most impactful event. Out of a 25 to 30 hour game, it took me about 25, 30 hours to beat it. The impact of Joel dying in hour 2, as opposed to say 15, 20, 25, made the entire story quickly rise and then essentially drop off a cliff and then go to the climax where Ellie and Abby are there, and then it cuts to Abby and you fall off a cliff again. Then you get to Abby in the village and it falls off again. It's a roller coaster, but not in a way where it's constantly believable. It's like saying, okay, the first part with Joel and Joel being killed, okay, here is the prologue. Oh, Act 1, Ellie in Seattle. And then up to the point where it stops when Abby barges in. Act 2 is Abby. Then you have a slight Act 3 where we're really in a little shallow Act 3 with the fight scene, and then cutting into an Act 4 where Ellie decides to go to Santa Barbara and exact revenge. The parts don't really make sense. It like even trying to cut it to me, it doesn't make sense because really the last part of the game where she seeks revenge again, it's like an epilogue, which doesn't make sense to me. So I think what should have happened was you keep the same theme from Ellie and Joel from the first game. You explore that resentment, that discontent between in their relationship, the fact that Ellie is hurt, Joel feels regret and remorse, but and the fact that he had to do it, but he doesn't, or he feels remorse that he had to do it, but he doesn't regret the actions of having to do it. And Ellie trying to come to grips with the fact that she's been living a lie in her idea of Joel. And backdrop that portion into a more exploring the world and what's going on in the apocalypse. On top of the fact that maybe you drip some Firefly portion in there, and that is pretty much your arc. You don't really need a revenge arc in that one. Maybe Ellie decides that she's going to seek out the Fireflies as she's older, or maybe it's becomes something where you have a different story altogether, but one where Joel and Ellie explore the world together because the chemistry between the characters was so strong, and that's what made the story of the first one so compelling. And it was the relationship, and probably credit to both the voice actors in really putting those two characters and connecting so well. And that's what I wanted from the second game, was it more of that chemistry, a deeper understanding of how these characters interacted in their environment around. Then I'd say, here's Abby's story, and pluck it out and put it in a separate game. Make an entirely new character. Pretty much a Fallout situation here, where you got one storyline going in one side of the country, and, well, you have another storyline going in another side of the country. You don't really need to do these time jumps, these trek around the country, that sort of thing, and that allows you to tell your revenge story. You want to make revenge's bad story. You take a character that's new and you delve them into that and make their development, and especially their dynamic with Lev as well, in diving them into that and slowly change them over time. The fact that both of these things are really connected, and that you try to say, well, Abby is fine because, well, she regrets what she did, blah 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 blah. There's no basis in that, because when she tries to kill Dina, and Ellie tells her that she's pregnant, she says good. She's about to do it. Lev says no, and then they leave. Like, how does that even make sense? In that case, sure, okay, there's a dynamic there, but it's not explained. Thing is, it's much more impactful if you take that entire storyline, make it its own game, make it its own path, character arc, and make an actual believable character arc. The only person that makes sense in any of this game is Lev, and because we meet him so not really late in the game, but there's nothing in the game to contradict his personality at all. There's nothing in the game that contradicts his actions. So it's a believable character. thing is, there's multiple things that contradicts Abby's characters, multiple things that contradicts the established character that we have with Ellie, with Tommy, with Joel, and it feels so disconnected from that. It drops me out of the immersion. I'm immersed in the great game, great sound. Although sound had issues, I think I patched it. In many cases, my only sound was like really high with the clickers, which is just a sound balance issue that's easily correctable. So I can't really hate him on that. It's something that really fixed. I'm not gonna hate him on that. So the sound is tier, environments are top tier. Some weird with the combat system, but I mean, no combat system is perfect. And encountered anything that was solely repeatable that prevented me from progressing. I did encounter some of that, and I expect that. Can't really hate on a game for bugs when you have multiple systems in unison and some system breaks down and a glitch or a bug, and that's fine. I get that. Breaks my a little bit, but I understand. Hey, and forget about it. And move on. So for the comment, I love it. All of the their animations were great. Weird and awkward in them, but I think it was just because I didn't perceive as them making that sort of facial expression in that moment in time. But it wasn't anything near My Face is Lazy from Mass Effect, because that was hilarious, because it was completely out of character and implausible. While some of the facial animations in this wasn't built on that. It was just like, why would they make that? Am I missing something? Because I've seen people make those faces when they're confused, but yet they're having a different conversation. It's weird, but it doesn't break my immersion, and I'm able to kind of go on and say, oh, okay, and play the game and so on and so forth. The animations and combat systems, I'm able to overlook a lot of them if they're decent. So I mean, in many cases, those things aren't really the biggest things, except when you have an issue like Mass Effect 1 and playing Mass Effect 2 or 3, you realize how broken Mass Effect 1 is compared to 2 or 3 in the combat system. And that is something that comes from development of a system, not because the system is buggy in itself, but the system is upgraded over time. So in this one, I felt the upgrades they did were pretty good. I like the melee combat in it. I wish the shooting mechanics were better, but this is kind of what you get on a controller. And I'm really hoping, because I've pretty much went in a blackout. I don't know how I've done this. I pretty much went on a blackout for Horizon Zero Dawn. I've seen some gameplay and seen people struggle with control, and I wonder how different that's going to be with mouse and keyboard. Those type of games I like playing, but then again, I may end up going with a controller anyways, and my controller scheme goes with the Xbox just because it's more comfortable. But I think if they would have stripped this into 2 games and created a totally different story with Ellie, sprinkle a little Tommy in there, put all these new characters in there, Dina, Joel, and explored more of a relationship dynamic, a relationship drama, which in many cases what this game is, but it does it in a way that I personally just don't like. Like, I remember someone said this would be something that you normally see CW, and that is legit. that this is a type of drama that's not over the top, but so, well, yeah, I'm gonna say it, so over the top in many cases, has so many coincidences in many cases that it'd be something you would see the drama on that. It makes it unbelievable in many cases. And sure, I like some drama like that, like Arrow, but I don't think too much into it because I'm not interacting with the show. I'm just watching it. When I'm interacting with the game and I'm actually interacting in many of the situations, and you do that, it's just not me personally. It's just not my style of games. That's fine. Maybe it's your style of games and you liked it. I've talked to people that said, "Hey, I liked it because I didn't think too much into it. I just wanted to kill zombies and it was a zombie game, kind of, sort of. So I just wanted to do that because I didn't really pay attention to the first game. First game story didn't matter to me. I just liked the gameplay and wanted to kill zombies." Okay, cool. Everyone likes their game, but for a lot of people, what sucked them in to The Last of Us 1 was the compelling story. And that is why there's so much hate and discontent over this game right now. Because if I said we had an Abby arc, same gameplay, with many of the same plot points, besides you disconnect it from Joel and Ellie, and you make your revenge is bad, and you make the character development like you would in first game, and you have it to where you explore more the situation between the WLF and the Scars, explore more between the dynamic between the whole love triangle between Ellie, or not Ellie, but Abby, Nell, Owen, and displace that in the fact that she's helping a Scar, and in fact she's at odds with her own group and the Scars, so she's kind of alone, that sort of thing. That is a compelling story if you take that away from the entire point, Ellie and Joel. Great story. There's things that would change from that story from what they told? Sure. But it's a great story. There's many stories where I think they're top notch and would change many things in it, but they're believable and I like them. When you connect these two stories together, it makes it completely irrational at times. And at odds with how the player is feeling. Particularly the ending. You want revenge if you cared about Joel. But not being able to get revenge is completely at odds with the emotion of the player. It completely plays with your emotions, and in many cases, many people are going to find that playing against emotions feels empty, feels hollow. It's much like the idea in the fact that, sure, if you don't get revenge there, we feel that the character has lost everything, and it's a hollow victory because you beat them. It's not even a hollow victory, it's still a defeat because you didn't kill them. The thing that's more compelling in that is that able to kill Abby, it becomes a victory because everything was lost, and makes it more impactful. But I still stand my ground and say these is two separate games. Eliminates the problem with believability, problems with drag. The game seems to drag on forever as any other dog game. And you essentially just make two great experiences. And sure, maybe say, well, I want to package into one, blah, 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 blah. Well, this is it become a Fallout situation, whereas in two different types of sides of the country. And that's what people want. I mean, more expansion on the lore and more expansion on the world, and you get to explore the dynamic of a brand new character that you know about. But when you take those brand new characters, or the brand new character of Abby, really make the story silly and at odds with Joel, and killing your main, killing a component of why the chemistry of all the characters work, you kill your game. From a story standpoint, for the people of the first game. Sure, you make a completely new game. Then following that break the continuity with the first game in multiple cases, because you have to come up with contrived, silly narratives like one NPC that kill was okay. What about the NPC that Ellie? Are we just gonna have that in the third game? We don't know. Isaac has a kid and goes hunting after this time because he and kills it. Like, you become this cycle of non-plausibility that makes sense because you can just see event from occurring that is not in the game and say, "Oh, here you go. This is the story." It's weird, awkward. It's not something that's believable as you go through it. So I'm gonna go up. This is a 20. And really, what I would change with this game, Last of Us 2, and that centers around the dynamics of Joel and Ellie in a totally different setting. You can have Joel hunted, kind of figure that is going to be on the run, and safety net in many ways because there's multiple people around and it's the ability to fortify the city. But make a story based off that, like remnants of the firefighters are going after him. That is not Ellie. Don't make it a revenge plot, but make it to where, hell, they're going after Ellie and Joel's the unknown. Maybe that could be a good one. Where Joel isn't even the target. They want Ellie. And so it becomes a fight for survival, like the first game was a fight for survival as you're going across the country for this goal. It becomes a fight for survival with the goal being to protect Ellie. Don't kill Joel in the process. Maybe you do kill Joel in the process at the end. But honestly, I'd prefer that you don't, just because he can be used to build future characters. And I think that's what a lot of people don't realize. Is when you take a new character and you put them in an existing world, like an existing franchise, and you don't have the key main character there, Joel, and your other key main character, Ellie, is acting contradictory to what players believe, you lose all ability to use character interactions to build the new character's development. And that's what kills it. Games like Final Fantasy, there's reasons why new characters come in and it's a new world. Brand new, everything's brand new because they're starting from a base of character development, a brand new world. Everyone's brand new. You know nothing about anything. And so it works because as characters are talking, you're developing the entire world. World building, your character building, you're developing relationships with characters. You're getting the dynamics of what relationship works. Who kind of is into who if you have a love story going, a romance. Like, you get all those things because it's building over time. When you insert new characters into an existing franchise, and your two characters that you can build everyone else off of are acting contradictory and or dead, you have to do all of this again. You may not have to do world building again because everyone gets the world in many cases, but if you're in a different location, you need to do world building. And I felt like they did that with Seattle, that world building. I thought they did pretty freaking poor for Santa Barbara because it's just a random location, random people, random people rattler wise, random enemies, just a new kind that aren't in it, have no lore attached behind them other than they're slavers and bad, and you don't really, the mechanism of them there is to switch up gameplay and make a mechanism where Abby is captured to push the plot forward, and I hate it. I hate that method of storytelling. Drive a situation up out of a bunch of happenstance and then try to present it as believable and say, hey, look here. Just don't like it. And then the second thing would be that I'd like to wrap up on is that I believe this game, if split, both of these games would be not just critically acclaimed by critics, but would have been well received by all the fans. They may not have liked Abby as much as the Abby storyline as much as the Ellie and Joel, because Ellie and Joel are a continuation story they like. But the thing is, Abby would be brand new. The location is brand new. The world is generally the same, so you're exploring more world elements in it. But in a brand new story with brand new characters and make it believable, it's a hit. People would be asking for sequels with Abby in it and Lev. People would be asking for that because you're not destroying things, but you're building up and more of the world. That's why people like Fallout as much, because the world is being built upon. Oh, you want to go to Boston? Here's the world that's being built up. Same thing with Elder Scrolls. Okay, here, you're in the Empire. And you're one and you have a story here. Hey, let's go up to Skyrim and build this area. Hey, let's go to Morrowind and have build up that story. And then whatever the next story is going to be, I think it's, I'm not sure, next story. But people like those because ultimately you're world building, but you're also experiencing that realm for the first time through a new character, and you're learning everyone that's new. You're learning them at the same time, actual character in the game. And that's what allows you to be so immersed in the experience that you want to go out and explore. You want to look around. You want to see what's out there. And I find that great. Sure, you can have too much of that, like, say, in Assassin's Creed sense. But in Assassin's Creed sense, the world becomes so big that it becomes empty, if that makes sense. And that kind of made me feel about the open area in Last of Us 2. Was that you had so many buildings in this open area, but as you were moving from building to building, there wasn't much there. Like, enemy-wise, there was no, oh, we gotta sneak around this area. Now, when you got to the corridor parts, when you're moving from after the gate, put you in a cutscene into the hotel, which you got to break out of, and then the TV station. Those are so many things to traverse. You got traps, you got enemies, you got things like that, but it's a corridor experience. And that's fine, but if you have an open world, you've got to fill it with something. And that's why people like a lot of things with Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 4 to an extent, and also why people dislike Fallout 76 opposed to the janky, but the world felt empty because there was no NPCs, there was nothing to interact with, it was all recordings. So it broke immersion. It was like you were walking around in a land and no one else was alive. felt made the world seem dead in many cases. So yeah, that's my wrap up here. 35 minutes, another long video on it. But hey, at the end of the game, this game gives me pretty strong feelings when it comes to it because I really love first game because of the story aspects. It's so strong with me that it's like Witcher. Witcher 1 didn't do much for me, but I played it. Witcher 2 kind of dragged me more in the story. But Witcher 3 just grabbed me and yanked me into that story, and it was so immersive and great. And that's kind of how Last of Us 1 did. Was grabbed me and pulled me into the story. And it was absolutely crazy how it gripped me like that. Yeah, go ahead and leave your thoughts below. I actually didn't leave a score on Metacritic, but I mean, at the end of the day, y'all generally know my ideas from the previous one. I'd still give this game a meh. So, because of the story, because I'm more of a story-driven person, that's just my personality. That's just how I like to play games, things like that. That's why games like Persona 5 Royal, which I'm playing right now, which the gameplay, to me, I'm used to games like that because of like Final Fantasy, so it's nothing new. But the story is really pulling me in just because it's, hey, have this, something happened. Oh, I want to know what happened, so we're gonna have to go back. Like the story is pulling me in with that. And even in games that I don't really like the combat systems, like TLOU, Pillars of Eternity. I'm not high in those combat systems. However, story gripped me. It pulled me in. And even though the combat system at times was frustrating to me because I'm just not very good at it at all. Kind of like XCOM, I'm not very good at the XCOM system at all. I like the game because of the story. It pulls me in and keeps me. So go ahead and leave your comments below. Tell me how you feel about this idea, really, that if you separated these two games, how you would feel if you had a different narrative completely, a different story with Joel and Ellie. And say you had a story with Abby that was unrelated to Joel and Ellie. And how would you feel, how you would have felt about a story like that? If you actually would have thought highly of both games, if you had something that was just like the first one with Joel and Ellie, explore that relationship dynamic, but also the new expansion into a different section of the world with different characters, have that be Abby's own story. Yeah, I will see you guys next time. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well. I'll see you guys later.